Hello once again, and welcome to our series on Excel 2013. Now we get to go into the good stuff, where we start to work with actual data and actual tables, which is some of the strongest points that Excel boasts, next to maybe perhaps functions and mathematics and logic and all that kind of stuff. But hopefully we'll have a chance to get to that later. Anyways, for the meantime, in order to work on this assignment, you will need to create from your My Site, as always. Go to My Site, New Document, create an Excel workbook, and this Excel workbook is going to be called Lesson 3-Defining Tables, because that's what we are going to be doing, defining tables today. You'll also need to have open the Lesson 3 demo doc. This is once again a protected worksheet, so you'll need to work from your own version of the document. So you'll be able to copy this data, but you won't be able to really mess with this sheet. Anyways, so what we want you to do first off is take all the data that is supplied here in this here document. I'm going to hit Control C, copy it over, and let's say somewhere near the upper left. I don't really want to put it in the upper A1 column. Let's put it somewhere in the upper left here. We're going to paste our data. Don't really like where this month is, so because I kind of like to have my dollars and cents all the way on the right hand side. So I'm going to highlight, drag, and drop this over here. Okie dokie. So as you can see here, we have a list of monthly expenses for a small household. Just some basic expenses like groceries, gas, utilities, car payments, and that sort of stuff. So pretty easy to work with. But now we want to make a table. We want to make something that is visually appealing, that's easy to read, and easy to keep track of. So the first thing you want to do in order to create a table from data, hey, let's back up for a second. Maybe you're asking me, well, hey, why do I need a table? I'm in a spreadsheet. Well, yes, you're in a spreadsheet, but unfortunately when you go to print data like this, it just appears as a white sheet with nothing else. There's not even the little borders between the cells unless you go to turn that on. A table is, for the most part, more about aesthetics. When you're working in a spreadsheet like this, it's more like you intend to keep it this way and to keep editing it. When you want to have some sort of permanence to it, time to make a table. So we highlight, we don't have to highlight our entire table to make this work. We just have to have nothing else around the table, at least not directly adjacent to the table. So we select some piece of information within our table and go up to, on the Home tab, Format as Table, and we get to pick from our list. Now, unlike with Microsoft Word, when you had a table already drawn, you were able to select from all sorts of style options and you would kind of get an image here of how it would look. It would automatically do that for you. Unfortunately, that's not the case here. So I have to actually select a table. Let's go with this one. And now it's going to double check, is this the correct data range? So you can see that it's put a box around my data. If that's not correct, you got to fix that. So you can fix it if it's not correct by clicking this button and then selecting the data yourself and then pressing it again. It also asks you if your table has headers. So headers are like titles for each of your columns. And yes, I do have headers. So this is all January, and this says month. This is vendor. So yes, those are my headers, so I want to keep that selected, and I go OK. So if I don't have those selected, then the end result will be that it will just, all of my fields will look like these fields. Boy, I don't like that at all. That doesn't look attractive to me. So now that we've formatted this as a table, we can go and change the actual appearance of our table. I'm going to do this one. Let's go Table Style Medium 13. That is not a creative name, but that's what we'll use. Alright, so let's see. What do we notice about this table? Well, first of all, we have banding. So what I mean by banding is you have these vertical stripes, or sorry, these horizontal stripes that are slightly different color. Just makes things easier to view along a single line. And we have a darker, different color along the top where our header row is. The text is also bolded, and in this case it's white just so it shows up better on the background. And we have these little drop-down menus. But yes, that is the basics of our table. Now, just like in Microsoft Word, when you click inside of a table, a new Table Tools Design tab comes up. So let's go over to that. When we're inside of this, we get a little bit more control. If you forgot to have header row selected, you can select it up here. Now that we've created our table, it will actually create a header row for us. Now, since I did the header row right at the beginning, by deselecting header row, it actually just hides it altogether. But if you were to have a table and you didn't have header row selected when you created the table, it would simply select the top row in your table to add that. What else can you do? Well, we can add a totals row. Now, totals row is a natural thing to have in a table, particularly when you're working in Excel. You're often working with dollars and cents, those sort of figures. So let's add a totals row. Totals row is going to look for a series of numbers that it can add up. It doesn't know that this is money, and we can tell it that it's money. Yeah, maybe I'll tell you. Let's tell it that it's money, just for fun. We're going to go and highlight this column here, and we're going to click the currency button, and we'll click that one and go currency as well. We'll talk more about conditional formatting at a later time, but for now, there we go. So it's money, and our totals row has gone and totaled things up for us. How nice, how kind. You can also, let's actually get rid of our totals row for now. We can also add directly below or to the right of the table more information, and the table will automatically expand to include that information. So let's go with, say, one more in January. See, my autofill is seeing that I'm typing something that's already existing in the column above it, as we discussed before. So I'm just going to press enter, and bingo bango, we have added another row to our table. We could also do so here. We could say, no, it doesn't really matter what we type, does it? Automatically adds it, doesn't give it a title, it just calls it, column 1. I'm going to expand these a little bit. Just calls it column 1, but that doesn't really matter. So I'm going to undo both of those because we don't need them. Back to the design tab here. Other thing you can do, first column, last column, and banded columns. So first column is what it's going to do is bold everything in the first column or the last column, and there's lots of reasons why you might want to do that. You might want to treat this as a sort of title column, in which case that's perfectly reasonable thing to do, and so maybe these are a list of names, for example, names of people, and this is their general information. So you want the names of people to be highlighted in some sort of way. Last column does the same thing, and I kind of like that because it is showing my costs. You can also go banded columns. Now, what banded columns is, so when we say banding, we're talking about how this one's darker, this one's lighter, darker, lighter, darker, lighter. It's banding. It's alternating colors back and forth. You can also vertically band your columns. Personally, not a big fan of that. Even when it's like this, it sort of diminishes the purpose of having the banded horizontal or banded alternating down the list. So I don't really like that. If it works for your eyes at some point, then sure, go for it, but not in this case. We're going to highlight our last column, though, just so that we can have our expenses shown. Now, let's say we want to add repetitious information. So information that is going to be the same as previous, but we don't feel like typing it out. Well, let's start off with, we're going to add the month of February. Hit enter once, it already adds it to my chart, or to my table, I should say. I'm going to type February one more time, and now I've got a series that I can work with. So I've highlighted those two, I'm going to control and drop down, and there we go. We have now added to our table. And actually, you know what? Let's undo that real quick, because here's what I really want to do. I want to repeat the vendors, because let's say I am going to go do February. So I can either Control C, copy that, or I can drag and repeat all the way down until it shows up as water. We'll enter February here, and copy that down as well. We'll copy down the names of everything, because those are the same. And we'll copy down the expenses. Now, in the real world, you certainly wouldn't copy down your expenses. The things would not be identical from month to month. Certain things would, like your loan payments and stuff like that. But your utilities, some of them would, some of them wouldn't. So let's just for argument's sake, this one's going to be 205. This one's going to be 250, and that one's going to be 162. Okay, so we've got a little bit of a change just for those, and let's say water goes up a little bit as well. Had extra long showers that month. Okay, so now our table has grown a wee bit. So now let's add a totals row. Voila. Or I should say voila, proper French pronunciation. Voila, we have our completed expenses for February and January of this year. And we've used autofill to help us out so that we didn't have to retype everything all the time. Now, we haven't talked about these filters. The filters are actually super snazzy, super useful. I'm going to turn totals row off for just a second here. There we go. The filters will show you, so if I'm filtering, let's say, vendor, and I want to see just what I've spent at Costco. So I just select Costco and I go OK, and only my expenses from Costco, including all the data across the lines, show up. Now, that did not delete anything, it's all just hidden, and you can see the class or the filter button just has a funky little character next to it, so I can go back and hit select all. Shabam. Nice and easy. Okay, now let's add the totals row back in. And let's do that. We're going to this time go classification and switch over to utilities, because I just want to know what I'm spending on utilities. Haha, so January, February, anything listed as a utility shows up. And look, the totals row is only looking at the visible data. So now it's telling me exactly what I spent. Let's see here. Let's go to month, and I'm going to have it tell me now, what did I spend on utilities just in February? Voila! We have now filtered twice. This is really, really useful. This is why you would want to use a table for this sort of thing if you were keeping track of your own finances, because it gives you all these really fancy, handy-dandy tools for tracking all this stuff and getting quick, what we would say, making quick queries of the data, asking Excel to find specific information for us, and you don't have to go with a calculator and add it all up. So how handy is that? So we'll go back, select all, and select all, and just like that, all of our information is back in order. Now let's say we wanted to do a different kind. We wanted to say sort the data. Maybe I wanted to sort my expenses from smallest to largest. So I'll go expense, and we're going to go sort smallest to largest. Oh, look at that. Really fancy. So feel free to play around with those little expense, or I should say little filtering tools. I don't think I can overstate how useful those are. I'm going to have to go and sort by month by doing A to Z now. A to Z is not going to work for me. There we go. So now we're back into the original order. Now, if we had January, February, March, and so on, that would definitely completely throw our data out of whack. We would not be able to get it back into its original order very easily. But Doesn't really matter. It's one of the limited situations where you would actually need to do so. Anyways, what I'd like you to do is create this January and February expenses list. And the last thing I'd like you to do is sort your expenses by classification. So we're going to sort A to Z. And that's it. That's all I'd like you to do. So you'll save this document. This is your lesson 3 defining tables. It's been saved in your My Site, so you may need to go back to My Site and click the three dots again, and hit download a copy, or slightly easier in my mind, just file, save as a second copy. Save it to your ICT resources folder, which we've done all along so far with your Word assignments, and you can drag and drop it into OneNote. That's it. Hope you found that this lesson was useful. I'm sure you'll be coming back to it often for future assignments, so make sure this is completed and hand it in. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great